So the session today is essentially a rundown of the past of Celo, kind of what is also hot topic at Celo right now, the different elements of Celo, and then also, as you may be aware, Celo is moving to a new chain, a new stack, joining the Optimism network or the Superchain. So we'll also have Josh here from Superchain Eco, who's going to give you a full rundown of how that is and what benefits it can have for your organization. And I'll tie it back together to specifically what are all the benefits you can get from Celo within the Superchain for your organization. Spoiler, I've personally been a builder now for 4 or 5 years, and I think we're at the best position ever for building on-chain solutions. Just if you look at the sheer number of resources and tools available, but also incentives and grants and programs that exist. I think if you build smart, you're able to really benefit from that and gain significant additional revenue income, but also grow much quicker. Vic, given you're the special guest today, if at any point you have a question, something is unclear, just raise your hand and we'll jump right into it. And then we do it that way. So a bit about myself. I already said I've been building for a long time. Started in the space in 2016. Found my way quite quickly to the DAO on-chain world. Was part of the initial cohort of DAOs back in 2018, 19. Back then, the platforms were called DAOstack, Aragon, Colony. Out of those, only Aragon is still around. Since I've been trying to build real-world solutions, starting initially with a nonprofit foundation in the Caribbean, and that's also essentially what drew me to Celo, as Celo is one of the most purpose-driven blockchains and networks that I've ever come across. I'm also personally involved in Regenerative, one of the other projects in this program. So you may see my face, not just today, but across other weeks. That doesn't take away that my number one role in this program is the lead of Celo Public Goods, which is the on-chain ecosystem development arm funded by the Celo Community Treasury, and essentially your best partner for doing anything on-chain with Celo. Before jumping into it, I want to do a bit of a small introduction by yourself. Maybe Fig, if you can just share first, what got you into crypto? Secondly, what got you to found this specific company? And then end it with how much you know about Celo from 1 to 10.
Wow, we're opening a can of worms on this topic.
Let's try to
Um,
keep it within 2 minutes.
yeah, I know. Yeah, so corporate guy used to work in a bank, lead product and innovation in Standard Chartered Bank. So been in digital space and finance space for a long time. Then after that, I wrote a white paper back in 2015. I met Vitalik and the rest of the team in DevCon in Shanghai. So I was one of the OGs. Really get the skin in the blockchain space in 2018 full time. Been building ever since. So I'm kind of like during your era as well. Then how do I build? What is the genesis idea of ThirdFi? Is because we are builders ourselves, and then we know that the toolings and the infra and the solutions for builder even now is better, but a couple of years ago even was worse. We want to build Stripe for Web3 and DeFi so that people could actually have more solutions to build on chain. That's how ThirdFi comes to be, third version of finance, ThirdFi. And on top of that, how much do I know Celo? Yeah, I mean, Celo is one of the OG in the last cycle, right? I actually, just to let you know personally, I hold Celo myself because then Celo was one of the one that I look upon because there's a lot of good technical solutions. And yeah, I know about Celo. We have not built recently yet on Celo, but personally, I hold Celo token as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. Thank you so much. Then I have a follow-up question, just out of curiosity, and you can just raise your hand every time you think it is kind of a priority for Celo. I have a bunch of different categories. Let's start with gaming. Do you think it's very relevant for Celo or a little bit less relevant?
Gaming was always not so relevant because it was always captured by Polygon or Binance Chain, right? Yeah.
Pretty good. I agree. I think at this stage, there's limited gaming on Celo. It's definitely not the top priority. I'll
Yeah.
just run through all of them, given we're just you and us. So, DeFi is, I would say, one of the more important elements of Celo, not the most important. I think
Mm,
Celo has really this real world focus, and we'll go deeper into that in a bit. So speculative DeFi is less critical.
mm,
Social is something that's slowly growing, but I wouldn't call it a top priority either. Social is baked into some applications, but it's not kind of social just for the sake of doing social. Real world assets is an ecosystem that's growing more and more on Celo. I believe we're top four, top five when it comes to RWAs, especially in emerging regions. We are one of the biggest players. Next up, stablecoins. Celo is big on stablecoins. Also go deeper into that in a bit, but Celo launched with a vision to enable peer-to-peer transfer for especially underbanked, and a stablecoin protocol was baked in from the get-go to enable that. Next up, refi or regenerative finance is a little bit of a niche. You could see it as kind of impact and climate meet DeFi. This is one of the niches that Celo is also dominating in. It comes very closely together with organizations such as Gitcoin or Regen Network, which are also gravitating in that space. Deepin or decentralized physical infrastructure is a growing but still relatively small niche on Celo. It's becoming more and more relevant, especially as when you have a good stablecoin and RWA infrastructure, then it's much easier to bootstrap these Deepin networks. Meme coins, not that big on Celo. There's some, let's call it positive, some meme coins, like one or two that are rewarding people for actual on-chain positive behavior, but there's no such thing yet as, I don't know, Joe Biden, Bowden meme coin. It's not really happening on Celo. Public goods, which you can imagine is also something that Celo is really big on. Open source software development is really cherished in the ecosystem and rewarded. And scaling, which is a topic that Celo has always played a big role in. Because again, if you want to build solutions for real people, you need to be very cheap and fast. And that's something that Celo is still front running or kind of really pushing, initially separate or semi-separate from Ethereum, but now, as you'll see in a bit, much closer to Ethereum again.
okay.
Let's do a bit of a summary. So you already mentioned Celo is one of the OGs, and that's actually very true. Celo launched over 4 years ago now, with starting development, I believe, 5.5 years ago. So it was really um, one of the first on-chain deployed EVM layer ones that had a focus definitely on the real world, comparable to, like you mentioned, like the OGs, like the Polygons and the Binance chains and what so. Um, Celo had this vision to enable prosperity for all, and it's a relatively broad mission. But what it comes down to is that the ability to transfer trust and financial power through blockchains is something that Celo wants to bring aggressively to the developing regions. It's something that Celo back in the days felt that it's just not possible in Ethereum back in 2019, 2020, 2021. It was normal to see like plus 100 um, way gas, and people had to pay dollars to just send transactions. So Celo said, no, we cannot build the vision we imagine on that infrastructure. So we need to launch our own chain. That had a baked-in stablecoin protocol to create these so-called Celo US dollars, the Celo euros, and different stablecoins for these local communities. And it was also mobile first. So it leveraged this solution called Plumo, which was based on ZK Snarks to allow for mobile-like nodes. I also made an overview just to kind of have it all here. So an L1 EVM focus on real world use cases, really trying to build what they call as regenerative digital economy. The concept of that is essentially the idea that if we keep building valuable resources, such as open source infrastructure, on and off ramps, that contribute to the benefit of all of Celo, that over time the economy will keep growing and keep growing. And this is very comparable, as you'll see in a bit, also to how Optimism thinks about and funds its ecosystem development. Um, Already mentioned mobile first. Some elements that make it extra mobile first is for the past year, Celo has had mobile number mapping, which especially when using, for example, the native wallets like Valora, creates quite a powerful experience where you're able to send money to anyone in your contact list basically instantly. And they can always connect to their account later, and that creates quite a unique experience. Another element that Celo has and has had for multiple years is gas abstraction. So you can pay gas with any token. that's especially, at least any approved token, that's especially useful for stablecoins. So for example, someone can have USDT on Celo and they don't need anything else. They don't need Celo, they don't need ETH, they just need USDT, and then they can send and receive that from natively. Another big native wallet that was launched last year is MiniPay. It's really, really big in Africa. I believe they crossed 3 million users. So if you ever have a desire to expand into Africa, this really is the gateway into that. It's a collaboration between Celo and Opera is one of the main browsers in Africa. Celo also have native on-chain governance with a community treasury. I believe currently there's about around $7 or $8 million cash, and then about 80 million or 90 million Celo tokens that are still under control of community governance and can be used to fund different initiatives. This was quite unique, and it is actually still unique because many L1s or L2s that have governance don't allow the community to actually decide where all of the treasury is spent, how the protocol updates happen. A lot of it is still coordinated by centralized or core teams. In the case of Celo, there are core teams, of course, but the community treasury is really in full control of the community. And theoretically, you could propose something tomorrow, and if you rally enough people, you can get it done. And that is quite a strong power because if you, for example, identify a market that you believe is critical for Celo, but also aligns with your protocol, it is the actual real opportunity to write out a proposal, get it funded, get it approved, and execute on it, which is quite unique to Celo. I mentioned Mento briefly, this native stablecoin protocol that was baked into Celo. They're actually in the process of spinning out of Celo. Till date, they have launched, I believe, 7 different stablecoins, including a Philippine stablecoin recently, and Kenyan shilling stablecoin, a Brazilian real stablecoin, and they're really growing that as well on Celo. So it's also a gateway into many of these emerging markets. Especially in Africa, that's, I would say, the biggest region for Celo, but also increasingly LATAM, Southeast Asia, Celo is seeing penetration. And then another exciting element is that soon, most likely November this year, Celo is moving from their layer 1 to an Ethereum layer 2 using the OP stack. This has a lot of benefits as it reduces significantly the development and operation costs of Celo, which ultimately means 1, better experience and faster development. But 2, it also means that even more of the resources can flow to builders that develop solutions opposed to people that just run validators. It also connects Celo into this bigger Optimism network and the Superchain, which Josh is going to show you in a bit, kind of what it all means and what it's all about. And maybe more importantly, it ties Celo back to Ethereum. So you can really see this value chain where it's Ethereum, Optimism, and then Celo sitting on top of that, with Celo really being the gateway to the real world users and funneling some of that value back down the stack and also up from the stack. To end it with some positive news, this is kind of all from today. It's actually really exciting to be part of Celo now, maybe more exciting than almost ever before, because a lot of these bigger visions are starting to play out. So just recently, Celo surpassed Tron for daily stablecoin addresses, which has been a kind of big strategic move from the beginning of the year. As you can imagine, a lot of people in the world use Tron on use USDT on Tron as a means of payments, as a mean of transferring value. But for a company like USDT, they would rather work with a net positive organization with a good name and a good brand and a lot of on and off ramps on the ground. So we're seeing more and more of this USDT value flowing to Celo, which on itself is a really, really big opportunity in the billions of dollars a year. And then secondly, tomorrow, the Alforos L2 testnet is going live. So tomorrow we'll have the first L2 testnet of Celo built on the OP stack going live as well. I think that's a good transition to hand it over to Josh for him to walk you through a bit what that Optimism L2 world means. And then in about 10 minutes, I'll draw that back to like tangible perks and programs that you can benefit from. Maybe before Josh does it, any questions so far or just positive vibes and thumbs up?
Not really. Yeah, I saw the tweet today as well from Italic. And of course, a couple of VCs were saying about this. Yeah, so saw the progress. Yeah, congratulations. I think the testnet, yeah, okay. Testnet tomorrow, November mainnet. Okay, understood. I guess for us, maybe just personally, I need to inform our tech that as part of our integration to Celo, right, I guess will be like mostly will be Celo on OP stack on the Superchain rather on the
Mhm.
native Celo network right now. And of course, yeah, I'm aware of the stablecoin growing interest. I'm actually quite surprised because personally, I'm in Asia, right? As you know, everybody's using BEP20
Mhm.
or TRC20, right? But yeah, hearing that Celo stablecoin address is going, which means that there are a lot of adoption of CUSDT, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised about it. Maybe I will need to read more about this as well.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I think it's also great for us to see. Just last week, there was Eat Safari in Africa, and we had some
Mm,
team members on the ground and they lost their wallet. So they didn't have a means of paying. And they actually
mm.
lived off just mini pay and USDT for over 5 days, and it worked, which was quite an
Oh,
eye-opening experience, right? Imagine you are really forced in a position that you're unbanked and you can actually keep on living. I think, yeah, we're an exciting point. Cool, Josh.
indeed.
I'll hand it to you for a bit, and then I can draw it back in.
Awesome. I will share my screen immediately. I hope you guys can see my screen. Yeah, we're good. Perfect. So we're gonna talk about the super chain this today. Just to give you a little background about myself, I'm Josh, as Luke mentioned. I've been working in this space now for the past 4 years. Funny enough, I got my opportunity to work in the space because of Luke. He was focused very heavily on Collectivo in the past and still is. And I had just stopped working in investment banking, and I was looking for an opportunity in the crypto space. And Luke, being someone that I knew past because we both were born in the island of Curacao, I was given the opportunity to start there, and that's kind of where my whole journey has brought us to this exact point right here, where we can start exploring the super chain for Celo, but also more chains in the future. So, Vic, as we're just making this present, or we're performing this for you, if you have any questions, please let me know. If you don't understand any terms or anything, or if I'm speaking too loud or too slowly, please just butt in and let me know. So, the super chain. So the super chain, as sorry, super chain, as many people don't know this, is a network of OP governed blockchains built on a common standard. This common standard, as Luke already mentioned, is the OP stack. This allows for a form of shared security, governance, and values. We're going to dive much deeper into the values in a couple minutes, but every OP chain in the super chain, as I said, is built using the OP stack. If you don't know what the OP stack is, a quick rundown of what the OP stack is kind of very the technological aspect of it. It's an open source MIT licensed technology stack for deploying scalable blockchain infrastructure. A lot of tech terms right there. The most important aspect of it, in my opinion, is that it's very much Ethereum aligned. We're bringing back more value to the Ethereum network. The OP stack will emphasize a lot more parallel development. This is something I see as interop, but also open source. Everything is open for anybody and everybody to contribute. With the specific structure that the super chain is trying to build, each chain will adhere to different standards and principles, and they will also receive benefits as interop, but also different programs and shared security. That's kind of where we're going to dive much deeper into are these programs for builders in the super chain. Right now, the most important and the coolest aspect of the super chain, this is my opinion, is the way that every single OP chain that is a part of the super chain, as one of the standard principles, has to contribute either 2.5% of its chain revenue or the greater of 15% of its profit. This basically means that anytime there is a huge demand for block space on a specific OP chain, the sequencer revenue or profit is driven back to a collective, and this collective is then shared for rewards and programs onto the super chain. What's really important about this for builders, and it's kind of been probably the biggest grants program, we call it the grants program, but the biggest grants program in crypto, in my opinion, is retro impact. Currently, Celo is not eligible for retro impact because something that is very much aligned and evolved within the retro funding impact is how we've moved towards impact as profit. Celo is very much, as Luke mentioned, prosperity for all. And this is why they align so well, in my opinion, is because Optimism, the Superchain, has moved towards impact as profit. If you as a project or a protocol are providing impact to the chain, you will be rewarded in some way, shape, or form.
One question, right? So when you say impact for the chain, basically is the block space using optimism, right? I'm guessing from that. So
Yes.
that each individual chain sequencer, the fifth generation, going back to this reward, going back to OPA basically, and OP will be using that as actually kind of like grant to give to that specific chain for all these different purposes.
Yeah, pretty much, but not. So that's kind of a perfect transition to where I want to go to. For the retro reward program, as you already mentioned, this is per chain, but right now we're using Optimism as an example. There's, like you said, there's a huge demand for OP block space. This generates sequencer revenue, and this will be used for retro funding and more value for builders. This is kind of this positive economic flywheel cycle that Optimism is really pushing forward, and why Celo and Optimism are so, in my opinion, greatly aligned for the prosperity, but for all, value for builders, and impact as profit. Now, this retro funding program is funded by two different sources. Currently, it's only funded by 850 million OP tokens. That is set forth by the Optimism Foundation. This is set standard of their tokenomics. There are different rounds this year. This year in 2024, we've had 4 different rounds, or going to have 4 different rounds. The first round was about on-chain builders. This is kind of the most aligned for projects. If we look at in this round, different projects from Zora to Base to Mode were able to apply for this program, and then were greatly rewarded for their impact on their chain. Besides just the 850 million OP tokens, Optimism also has the collective revenue that they're generating from each OP chain. This data, or the screenshot that I pulled, was from the Superchain Health Dashboard. If you're interested, it's on our Superchain Eco website that we will share. But basically, like I mentioned, the revenue from chains is then put forward into the Optimism Collective. Now, currently, this is still held by the Optimism Foundation. Governance for this will be decentralized in the future. That's on the roadmap for them, where it will be a community initiative for people to decide how this revenue will be used. The idea for the OP tokens, as well as the revenue, it's by rewarding positive impact to the collective. Developers, businesses, creators, and educators are continued to making open sourced and impactful contributions to the Superchain. That ties back to where we mentioned as the Superchain is very much Ethereum aligned, and the OP stack emphasizes development and openness. And this is really that openness standard that we're looking for. Now, another thing for builders, and this is something that is coming up, and I know Luke will be diving much deeper into it, is the Superchain programs. So Optimism is currently mostly Optimism organizing these. The first one was Superfest. This was very DeFi focused. Basically, the idea behind Superfest were that the chains Optimism, Base, Mode, and Frax came together, and they created a great incentive program for projects that are pushing DeFi on these chains. There was a reward program of about 1.5 million Optimism, and basically any project on these chains was able to apply for this and drive meaningful participation to their projects. The next one that is actually currently ongoing is the Sunny Awards. The Sunny Awards is an on-chain creator program. It's an award show, designed to honor accomplishments of builders and creators. Basically, there's going to be about 20 to 25 different awards that anybody can apply for, and you can win a share of 550,000 OP tokens. The idea of the Sunny Awards is to celebrate innovation and impact across the Superchain. Apart from that, as a project that applied for this, you were also able to get on-chain data and a metrics dashboard created for your project. And finally, one that I know that Celo has tried participating in, and maybe Luke will dive deeper into this, is the Superchain Grants program. As part of the Optimism Collective and the governance program, they've set aside for this year, they've set about 12 million OP aside for OP chains that are a part of the Superchain and are contributing revenue to the collective. The opportunity to apply for a grant. I know Celo applied for this, as it was recommended by the collective for every OP chain to apply to see what could happen. But then they came to they came to the conclusion that they only are going to be giving this grant to chains that are live. And basically, the idea behind this grant program is that as a chain, Celo can apply for this grant program and basically distribute this back to builders in the form of users incentive or early stage projects, if I'm not mistaken. And these are the type of programs that the Optimism Foundation and the Superchain in general are trying to bring forward. More and more of this is going to happen in the next coming years. Right now, there's a little over 37 OP chains that are in the Superchain. And the idea is to run programs like this throughout the year within the Superchain, but also on a native chain basis so that projects can really benefit from both the Superchain and its own ecosystem. And finally, the last point of aspect, this is something that is being pushed a lot more as if we've seen the evolution of user experience in the space is getting better and better. Something that the Superchain and Optimism is really trying to push forward is the idea of interoperability. The Superchain interoperability, as we see it before, you have like your app on, let's say, I'll give an example. I take Talent Protocol as they're very close friends of mine. They have an app on, let's say, Celo, and their app is only available on Celo right now. Once Celo joins the Superchain and we have Superchain interoperability, this will allow for projects to be usable on every single chain in a set standard with the Super ERC token standard. The idea behind this, how I've set it in my head, is let's say a specific chain is doing very well. Optimism is doing very well and has all the attention, but later on forward, Celo has all the attention. In today's standard, a developer has to go to the chain that's moving very well and that's hot, or that's what a lot of chains do. Well, with the Superchain interoperability and this new token standard, your token contracts are everywhere, so you can ride this wave without needing to really migrate. And as a builder, I think this is something that we've all really wanted. A great idea is I've always seen, I don't know if you guys know what DGods is, but DGods is an NFT project. The DGods team are always, I kind of find it funny, but they're always moving around from chains. They've gone from Ethereum to Polygon to now Solana, and they just keep moving around. They try to go where the hype is. And in the Superchain, if it were that, imagine that they could be on all OP chains at the same time. And that's why building on the Superchain, in my opinion, is like a great example of why builders should really move towards this. And I'm also excited to see what Celo does and bring in the future once it joins the Superchain in November and 2025 and beyond.
Yeah.
I think that was everything I have to share. For everybody watching and for Vic especially, we're Superchain Eco. We're the collective headquarters for all things Superchain. For anything you want to know when it comes to Superchain, you can follow us on Twitter. Check out our website, superchain.eco. We also have a weekly newsletter that we post about all the different highlights in the Superchain.
Hey, just a quick question, right? Superchain Eco is a separate
Yes.
entity or separate group that operates outside of Optimism and outside of Celo. So I guess it's a separate movement or something like that.
Yes, it's a separate entity. We do work. We've done work, for example, or going to be doing work with the Optimism Foundation on different funds, but we are a separate entity.
Okay. Maybe can you explain a little bit more? This is a good last slide. I was assuming that actually that is actually just asking a curious. I was assuming that this is under actually Optimism and then Celo participate in it. But in this case, what is the roles entity of like Superchain Eco within like the collective and of course Optimism stack and of course with Celo as well?
So for us, for me specific, we're a separate entity, as I mentioned, but we're a service provider for the Optimism Foundation and the entire Superchain. For example, we organized an event with Optimism in Superchain Space Brussels. That was a event to bring all the entire Superchain together. And also something that we're going to be focused on in the future is working together with the Optimism team to bring out a proper standard database of the Superchain right now, because there is, for example, not a proper, I wouldn't say proper is the correct term, but an official database of all participants of the Superchain. So something the Superchain, the Optimism team is focused on is building this Superchain registry. This registry will be the official database of the Superchain where chains would need to apply would need to participate into this, and we're building this front end for them. And so we're kind of more of like a service provider and assisting them in any way possible.
Okay, understood. So basically, it's like consensus for Ethereum and like Solana Foundation for Solana, I guess. Something along that line. Correct.
Yep.
Okay,
Exactly that.
understood. Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
If that was it, I will hand the floor, or let me say screen, back to Luke.
Thank you so much, Josh. That was awesome. Vic, this is a bunch of information in a single day and anybody else watching. So I'll keep my last part short, but I think you got the TLDR. Build in public, build on blockchains, build on L2s, build on Celo, and you're able to get a bunch of different perks. Both for your organization as a project, but also as an individual for your individual contribution. So I would personally recommend for at least one person of your organization to try to follow up kind of what's going on around these organizations, where the opportunities are, participating in governance or participating in these games are almost always rewarding, whether it's learning something, making a new connection, or getting rewards retroactively. I'm not gonna run through all of this, just to not kind of clutch you even more today, but I made a quick overview of all the different organizations that you would have to deal with or could deal with in the Celo ecosystem. Do it very quickly. So C Labs is the lead DevRel and chain development entity. The Celo Foundation is the main ecosystem development entity, and the Stabila Foundation manages the stablecoin growth. These are the, let's call it, original or most recent core teams, which you would consider traditionally from a team. And then the Celo Community Treasury has spun up and funded a bunch of different initiatives, including Presenti, Celo Native Grants, Celo Camp, Celo Native Accelerator, Denarii Labs, Accelo, which you're in today. Also things like Chainlink credits, different collectives that support specific niches, like the Credit Collective and the Climate Collective, community guilds, and then ultimately Celo Public Goods, which is what I'm leading, which leads the on-chain funding programs for the ecosystem. Some of these include Gitcoin rounds. Are you familiar with Gitcoin?
Yeah.
Great. So we run a bunch of Gitcoin rounds. We started our first official rounds on Celo last cycle. October, we have 2 or 3 more rounds coming, and we imagine running these continuously. There's the Retro Public Good funding rounds also on Celo. We did a first one about 5 months ago, and now in November, we're doing a citizen round, so for individuals. There's the regional DAOs, which are gateways into key markets with local representatives. There's Celo Africa, Celo Europe, Celatam, Thailand, different elements that you can also leverage for your organization. And then it's also a great gateway into these optimism-wide programs, whether it's leveraging the data you collect for Celo Retro PGF to reply for Optimism Retro PGF, participating in these joint programs like the Superfast, etc., and also participating in grants. So essentially, Celo PG is your ally in navigating that space, and we're trying to optimize, 1, the value created by builders, but then also 2, the value getting back from these ecosystems to the builders. And to end it, if you happen to, yeah, go for it.
When you mentioned about the public goods and the builders in this space, for example, I'm looking at the regional DAO, for example, Thailand. What does the DAO or the public goods in Thailand do? Just get curious.
Yeah, so for the regional DAOs, they all have a little bit of a different character because every region is different. So CoCelo specifically, they're called CoCelo. In Thailand, they primarily do meetups, KOL marketing, growth, translations, a bit more towards the marketing side of things. Where if you look at, for example, Celo Africa is more towards hackathons, builder workshops, university clubs. So it really depends a bit per region, kind of what the regional DAO character looks like.
Okay, understood. So somebody is leading the specific country or the specific region.
Yeah, correct.
And then depending on their...
Yeah, depending on the team's essentially specialties and the needs of the region, then they're scoped on specific elements.
Just curious, right? Would that find if you wanted to, let's say, for example, I know we are next to Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. But let's say, for example, Third Five were to spun off a separate Celo public goods for like Malaysia and Singapore, how would we participate to do that? So because as you see, right, we are already part of the builder, So we shouldn't be just working as like external startup trying to like, work with Celo, but we could actually be part doing that as well, right?
100%.
Because
So
we're
that's
offering the builders
definitely
API, developers API, and so forth.
so that's definitely an option. I think it is always an exercise of understanding where should Celo prioritize, and I think that is also an exercise of understanding. For example, would it make sense to try to launch a stablecoin in one of these countries? Would it make sense to grow XYZ markets into these countries? And then it's much easier to make the case for it, right? So, for example, recently we had a Philippines DAO proposal pass because of the Philippines stablecoin launching, and it just makes sense to then also do exchange relationships, meet up, grow, blah blah blah. So it's definitely something that we can explore, and I think actually something that is very positive if you are able to balance that act of kind of to what extent you can balance it. But if you're able to do that, it is essentially a great way to grow your protocol, to grow the community, to grow the local ecosystem, and to grow Celo ultimately. So definitely something we can explore, yeah, in the future. And then to wrap things up, we are going to be present at Bangkok with a bunch of different people. I think from the Celo ecosystem, you'll likely find about 20, 30 people there, maybe even more. So if you happen to be around, these are some of the events that you might want to kind of note down on your agenda. So we have Funding the Commons conference, which teaches you a lot about the kind of public goods, retro PTF elements. We have on the 11th an event called Settlement Day, organized by Celo and Ethereum, which really goes deeper into this concept of all these chains settling on Ethereum and building out this kind of interoperable collective layer 2 network. On the 12th, we have a intimate Celo Gather event in Bangkok, organized actually by Celo Thailand. It's going to be like 60, 70, 80 builders from Celo, so you're very welcome to join there. And then we'll also have a big presence at DEF CON and also actually at Eat Global after DEF CON. So if you're going to be there, let's definitely meet up in person and spend some time together.